Hey, can you hear me? Is this working? You applaud me, I haven't done anything yet. So, hi. I'm Eric, that's Meltem, and my wife isn't feeling well, so she didn't come. Susana. Yeah. So, she doesn't look at all like my wife. So, I'm here to talk to you about, I guess, what we do, what I do, what my wife and I do, and what I've been doing for about a half a century. Teaching acting, what? Acting, directing, writing. I've written about 10 books. 7 of them are on acting. How many of you are actors, or wanting to be? Let me see your hands. Well, that's pretty good. All right, if those people who didn't raise their hands, your secret desire to act, raise your hands. A couple, okay. All right, after I give you a general impression of acting, the source, the origin, where it came from, what is being done in the world, and what particularly I've spent over half of my life involved in. Before I do that, I just want to say that acting is universal. In every culture there are actors. 32 or 3,300 years ago, the Greeks started the whole thing. You know, their plays were primarily religious plays. You know, they had choruses. 12 people would all speak simultaneously at the same time. And then one person stepped out. His name was Thespis. And he became the first actor, and that's why we are called thespians. Thespis. So theater acting, even tribally before the Greeks, acting dates back for centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries. I'm based in America, Los Angeles, Hollywood. I live in Hollywood, actually. And I am an actor. And I have been an actor for most of my life. And I started teaching acting quite by accident. Very much so by accident. I was studying acting, even though I was a professional actor, and I had already done about 40 equity plays when I came to Los Angeles. I was studying acting with an actor-teacher by the name of Martin Landau. You might know he did several series, he's an actor. And he got a job as a general in the movie Cleopatra with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton. So he left for a whole year. Went to Italy to work at Cinecittà Studios in Rome. And I was left without a teacher. So I was like very depressed because that was the first teacher I'd ever had, even though I was a graduate of a university and I studied with many teachers. I was very frustrated because I never really got any answers of how you approach and fulfill material. How? The biggest word is the littlest biggest word in the acting in the world, I think. And it's a 3-letter word, how. So that if you're a doctor, you know how. If you're a surgeon, you know how to operate, you're trained. If you're an architect, you know how to do schematics and create stress factors for bridges, etc. If you're a lawyer, you prepare a brief, you have a process. But categorically and historically, actors have not really universally acquired a process. Most actors act intuitionally and instinctively without a craft, without a process, without a how. How do you do that? How do you do that? How do you do that? I'm categorized as a method acting teacher. Give you a little background on what method is. The basic foundation for method acting was Stanislavski. He was a Russian actor, actually, and director and teacher, as it turned out, and he created a system he called the Stanislavski system. And the Russians were doing it. Before Stanislavski came along, acting was very presentational, it was very representational. Actors were taught how to communicate emotions by doing gestures. They were taught how to mimic and present emotions without feeling them. So Stanislavski came along and felt that if the actor's job is to actually experience what the playwright, the screenwriter, the playwright, writes about, the author's intentions. Stanislavski felt that the actor's responsibility was to really experience that and express that. And so he created a system, and in the 1930s, Stella Adler, an American actress, an acting teacher, and a couple of other people went over to Russia to interview Stanislavski. They were with him for about a month, and they came back to New York and created the group theater. And that was the first place that the method, or the system, method comes later, I'll explain that. That's the first place in the United States that the Stanislavski system was introduced. It subsequently appeared in the plays on Broadway for a number of years, and the group theater flourished for many, many, many years, not many years, maybe about 20, 25 years. And then it dissolved for a lot of different reasons. And in 1947, the Actors Studio was formed, and they hired Lee Strasberg to be the artistic director. Now, Lee took what he understood from Stanislavski and modified it, and instead of calling it a system, he named it, he dubbed it the method. Now, all of you, I'm sure, have heard, he's a method actor, Marlon Brando's a method actor, Monty Clift is a method actor. They're method actors, you know. So method acting has actually acquired a bad reputation in the world. Not just in here, or United States, or in England, or whatever. The English frown on it. Many people put it down, and there's a very good reason for that. Because there are people out there who call themselves method actors, and they don't know what they're doing. They have no idea what the method really is. And so it got a bad reputation, but the people who have really used it properly have really risen to the top of their field. And, you know, I can name 100 actors, which I won't. But a lot of the Actors Studio actors are method actors. Now, I decided when I was 17 or 18 that I wanted to act. So I went to school. I went to a junior college, then I went to Northwestern University, and I studied theater, like your university people. Northwestern is a famous university, and it has produced a lot of successful actors. Well, I was studying theater and the history of the theater, and that I learned a lot about that, but I learned nothing about acting. And so I was very frustrated. But the people, the movies I would see, and the actors that I would admire, without knowing what their background was, or without knowing anything about their training or background, were people, they were all trained by Lee Strasberg, and they were all, or most of them, members of the Actors Studio, and I didn't know that. I was instinctively attracted to those actors, Rod Steiger, Marlon Brando, Geraldine Page, these actors, Eli Wallach, Ann Jackson, all of these actors who I admired tremendously. I didn't know what their training was. Later I found out that I was instinctively attracted to this kind of work. So I kept looking for a teacher, and finally I found Marty, who was a protege of Lee Strasberg and a member of the Actors Studio. And that was the first teacher that I experienced that taught me at least how to approach a piece of material, how to deal with the responsibilities of the author's intentions. And I was with Marty for 2.5 years until he got Cleopatra, and then I was stuck without a teacher. Well, Jack Nicholson was in class with me, and Jack and I got very close. He started Marty's class 1 week later than me. And I had seen him around town, said hi, how are you, whatever. And so Jack called me, he said, have you found a teacher yet? I said, no, I've looked at a couple of classes, but they're not doing what I need or what we're looking for. He said, well, come with me, I'm going to go visit a woman teaching on Fountain Avenue. It's the same building that Marilyn Monroe lived in. And her name was, I forgot her name, but it doesn't really make any difference. Donna Roman Drew, okay. So she was teaching in her apartment. She had these wooden chairs, and I was sitting down, and Jack was here. And 15 minutes into what she was doing, I said, oh, Jack, I want to leave. He said, no, don't be rude. Don't be rude, Eric. Wait for a break, man, you know. You can't just get up in the middle of the scene or a monologue and leave. Okay, I suffered through the next hour. And so I left, Jack left with me, and I was very frustrated. I was thinking of going to New York to study with Lee, because that's where his base was. I was married to my first wife, and she was pregnant with our first child. And we didn't have any money. And those were days when we really didn't have any money. I had $100 in the bank. I felt rich. And so I couldn't afford to go. And so a student, Ann O'Hara, who was in class with me in Marty's class, who I did a lot of scenes with, she called me up one morning when I was thinking of suicide. No, I really wasn't thinking of suicide, but I was depressed enough to think about suicide. And she said, have you found a teacher yet, Eric? I said, no. She said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to kill myself. And she said, no, why don't you start teaching a class? Because I learned about as much from you as I did from Marty, and maybe a little more. Why don't you start a class? I said, Ann, I'm not a teacher, I'm an actor. She said, well, if you don't have a teacher, did you ever thought that if you taught some people what you know, you could promote your own growth as an actor? Bingo, the magic word. So I started teaching. I had one student, her. Then I had two. Then I had three, and then I had two again. Then I had four, and I had three again. And this went on for a year. My wife was getting very frustrated because I was paying for a rental place to teach class, and it was costing me money to teach acting. But over a period of time, more and more people came, and then Kurt Conway, a famous Broadway teacher who started teaching because he was blacklisted during the Communist House Un-American Activities Committee. He was blacklisted, and so he started teaching, and he asked me to teach for him. He said, I don't like teaching beginners. Will you teach a class for me? I said, sure. So I started teaching for Kurt, and one thing led to another, and the rest is history, and my classes grew, and I started to make a modest living, and I started to develop this system. Now, getting to what we're going to talk about. It's all background. It's all filling in for you how I got here, how this got here, how the books I've written got here. So the thing is that what I learned from Marty through Lee, and by watching Lee, I was at the studio I watched him for 7 years. He would come in when it got cold in New York. He would come to California. He wasn't a dummy. He knew the weather was better there. So he started conducting the actor studio classes. So I learned what I learned from Marty, which was the first time I had any answers. I always say that what I learned was like an alphabet, A, B, C, D, E. And over the next 35 or 40 years, I went to RST in the alphabetic in terms of giving you an analogy. Now here's the whole issue. I am still fairly controversial, not as controversial as I was when I started, but here's the whole issue. There's a missing link in the method. The major acting teachers, Stella Adler, Sandy Meisner, Lee Strasberg, I forget her name, the four major acting gurus in America and who influenced people around the world, did not deal with a very important element. And this is the missing link in the method, which I spent the last 35 or 40 years promoting and developing. And that is that none of those teachers, and probably very few teachers, if any, in the world, are dealing with the actor's blocks and inhibitions and fears and instrumental inability to be free to act. And you cannot teach acting or teach a person to act without eliminating the obstacles, fears, dependencies, concerns, superstitions, emotional inabilities. You cannot teach a person to be an experiential, organic, honest actor without eliminating those obstacles. So for 35 or 40 years I was dealing with this part of the craft, which is instrumental. My system, and I call it a system, not a method, my system is based on two things. Half of the circle is the instrumental involvement in liberating the actor, free to act. The other half is the craft, how you address and fulfill material. Well, when I started teaching, I had almost no instrumental exercises. When I left Marty, I had 2 or 3 instrumental exercises to deal with freeing the actor, and I had very limited craft. So over a period of, well, 35 years at least, what developed was an ability to eliminate actors' problems and free them to act. And then I created a whole system of work craftually based on how to fulfill material that didn't exist. So actually, I could say, and this is really not in any way an ego trip or self-congratulatory, I created a very complete system of work based on liberating the actor. At one time I had 1,000 exercises. I pared them down to about 300. And I created a whole craftual approach to identifying the responsibilities, the obligations of material, how to deal with them. And I created a system called choice approaches. And there are 31 choice approaches that you use to create the choice that takes you where you want to go organically. So when you say, are you an acting teacher? No, actually I'm a no acting teacher. I teach people how not to act, but to become experiential so that they are experiencing what the character is experiencing from an organic place. Now, the 7 books I've written on acting, the other 3 books are not acting books. They're my experiences in Hollywood, my Hollywood stories, a couple of other things. I'm writing a book called Second Chance at Life, is how to repair the damage that we all grow up getting and being received, and our damage. Everybody in this room is a damaged person, including me, including you, all of us. We grow up in a society that well-meaning people who love us, without even knowing, without even being sensitive, damage us by criticism, by judgment, by inhibitions, by demeaning us, by damaging our ego and our self-confidence and our security. So we struggle through life functioning in spite of this damage, and there's no reason that we should. So for 30 years I've been working on a whole system of repairing the damage. I have 7 or 8 techniques to do that and to eliminate the damage so that you're free to be happy in life. You're free to act. You're free to write. You're free to have children and be in relationships that are fulfilling. So it's I think it's probably the most important thing I'll ever do in my lifetime, this next book, dealing with, repairing the damage. I've only got a few pages, maybe 25 or 30 pages. It takes me a little while to write a book. But the reason I'm bringing this book up, it's for everybody. It isn't just for actors. It's for the entire population of the world, if they're interested. It's because there's no separation between living and acting. If you have living problems and you're blocked and stifled and insecure and have ego issues and you can't get on the stage and be free of those things. They follow you onto the stage, or in front of the camera, or on television, or wherever you act, and they stop you from being organic, real, authentic, and honest. Reality is everything, and the truth is everything. And this work that I've been doing for, as I said, over a half century, the goal is freedom, truth, reality, honesty. And that's what the goal is to achieve in life, you know. To be happy, you have to be free of the diseases, the psychological, mental, emotional diseases that we acquire growing up in our society. You have to be free of that. Otherwise, what you do is you function in spite of your problems, and you never have a fulfilling life. Because these problems, they manifest themselves in your daily life, in your dreams, in your relationships, in your work, in your education, in anything you do. It doesn't even have to be a creative involvement. Anything you do is influenced by these issues, this damage that you function in spite of, instead of being free to function, period. The work that I've been involved in and what I've created is profoundly life-changing. And I don't say that as a pie in the sky or a dream thing. It's true. In the 55 years I've been teaching, I must have taught 100,000 people, 80,000, I've never counted them. But in all of those years, I can visually see the evolution, the growth, and the freedom, and the liberation of these people, and the life-changing impact that the work has. We just did a 2-day workshop here, upstairs in the theater, whatever. Is it upstairs or downstairs? It's upstairs, okay. And in 2 days, people I never met before, my wife and I work with my wife, we do 50-50, we're a team, she's a wonderful teacher. We have a very balanced yin-yang ability. She does things I don't do, and I do things she doesn't do, but we all do this work. And it's a perfect balance. And at the end of 2 days, the 12 actors that we worked with had significantly, visibly changed, understood. I mean, they weren't completely trained and free to act or whatever, but their consciousness level elevated, their awareness level elevated, their ability to identify their instrumental issues, their problems, elevated in 2 days. How many? 9, 10 hours a day, maybe 20 hours? 12 hours, 24 hours. Their whole sense of awareness and consciousness of who they were, how they felt, what they had to do, what acting was, changed in 24 hours. So can you imagine doing this work for 5 or 10 years? Melvin has started studying with me, what, 20what? 10 years ago. 10 years ago. And I'm still in training. She's still in training. But we're in training on a different level after all of these years. So she could tell you how this has impacted her life and how it has changed her life. So why don't you?
Ben 2005 yılında Eric Morris'le çalışmaya başladım. Los Angeles'taki yerine gittim. Yaşadığını bile bilmiyordum aslında. Hala hayatta mı değil mi? Hani bir efsane olarak kitaplarımı okumuştum da. Telefonu açınca bir şaşırdım tabii yani kendisi açınca. Bir numara vermişler. Ben böyle arıyorum onu. Ondan sonra Eric Morris'ten ben ders almıştım. Hi, this is Eric. Ben böyle şaştım kaldım tabii bu duruma. Sonra bir de sanki böyle hani velilerim, 2 tane yakın arkadaşım beni okula götürüp de teslim eder gibi bir törenle oldu bu merasim. Salı günüydü, hiç unutmuyorum. Sabah 9:30 gibi buluştuk. Ondan sonra aslında 10 gün diye gittiğim Los Angeles'ta 3 yıl kadar kaldım. Ve bayağı bir... Sorry, I'm speaking in Turkish. Do you want me to talk in English? Do you want me to talk in English?
Well, how many people here understand Turkish?
Everybody understands Turkish. Yeah, okay. Ondan sonra aslında okuduğum kitaplardan yani o zaman 2 kitabı çevrilmişti. Hala da öyle aslında. Daha çok kitabı çevrilmesi gerekiyor. 7 tane kitabı var vereyim. İnşallah Bahçeşehir Üniversitesi çevirecek. Bu iki kitabını okuduğumda içgüdüsel olarak bir sürü şey yaptığımızı aktör olarak farkındaydım. Enstrümanla ilgili çok fazla problemim yoktu. Ama fütursuzlaşmayla ilgili ve birazcık da uyumsuz olmakla ilgili problemim. Yani çok uyumlu buluyordum kendimi ama içime yiyordu. Uyumsuz olmak istiyordum açıkçası. O zaman kendimi daha özgür hissediyordum. Bununla ilgili tabii ki problemlerim vardı. Bu bakımdan çok iyi geldi birlikte çalışmak. Ve metodu öğrendikten, daha doğrusu sistemi diyeyim, öğrendim demeyeyim, yani her zaman deneyimlemeye devam ediyorum diyeyim. Sonra dönüp burada öğretmeye başlamak da daha muhteşem bir tecrübe oldu aslında. Çünkü öğretirken daha da fazla farkındalık düzeyiniz yükseliyor, daha fazla paylaşımınız fazlalaştığı için hep beraber inanılmaz güzel deneyimler elde etmeye başlıyorsunuz. Benim hayatımda Eric inanılmaz güzel bir kapı açtı. İyi ki burada. 7 yılımı aldı gerçekten onları ikna edip Türkiye'ye getirmek. Bahçeşehir Üniversitesi'ne çok teşekkür ediyorum. Kendi çabalarıma çok teşekkür ediyorum. Burada İpek Bilgin'e de çok teşekkür etmek istiyorum. İki kitabı çeviren, Eric Morris'in iki kitabını çeviren ve daha sonra eğitimine, craft'a devam eden, Eric Morris sistemi öğretmeye devam eden kızı Çağda burada kendisi, o da öğretiyor. Ve Bahçeşehir Üniversitesi'ne çok teşekkür etmek istiyorum. Savaş Bey'e çok teşekkür etmek istiyorum. Şimdilik benim söyleyeceklerim bu kadar.
Okay, I want to tell you I agree with every word she said. Every word. Okay. I also want to tell you a little bit about my wife, how we met. I got a job to be in a film in Argentina. I was playing an English colonel in a musical. I didn't sing or dance, but there were 17 production dance numbers in the film. The film was hypothetically about what happened in Buenos Aires after the Falklands War, and the British occupied Buenos Aires, which never happened. It was a fantasy. And in order to rebel against the British, they did tango dances. They would set up record players and they do dances in the middle of the street to rebel against the British. And I ran around smashing record players and arresting people and being on boats and helicopters and everything. And they knew that I was a teacher. So they asked me to do a seminar at a big theater, 2,000-seat theater, General San Martin or something, whatever. And everybody, it was free for the attendance, and I taught for 3 or 4 days. And my wife, at that time, wasn't my wife, I did a free lecture at her school. She was studying with a very famous Argentine teacher, Carlos Gandolfo. Oh, good. I did a free lecture. She came up to me after the lecture and she said, "I'm coming to America to study with you. I've read all your books." I said, "Okay, good, fine. I'll see you. Bye." And when I started to do the seminar for the theater, she was sitting right there in the first row. And so one thing led to another, and we went out to dinner and everything like that. We did not get involved that first time. And we started to communicate by letters and telephone and everything. Then I went back to see the film, and we got involved romantically. And over a period of time, she came to the United States, and we started to be together. We got married about 4 or 5 years later. And actually, we've been together 26 years. And she's an amazing teacher. She had she had an episodic at night, and she was doing a soap opera during the day. She was a professional actor and made enough money to buy a beautiful condo. So that's a lot. That's a lot, because they didn't pay a lot of money in Argentina to actors. So I thought it was an accomplishment. I wish she was here. She's not feeling well. we're still suffering from jet lag, 13-hour flight and all of that.